Happy New Year, folks. We are back with Erika Brown. She's the publisher and editor of The Cricket, coming to us from her undecorated office in Manchester by the Sea. Erika,
Right back in your decorated office.
look at this. Isn't it beautiful? We're
What's
still in
up
the
with
holiday
that?
spirit.
What's up with that?
That's coming down right after this interview, I think. Yeah. How
Well,
have you been?
Happy New
Okay?
Year. Yeah. I mean, I miss you.
I missed you too. Well, 2023 was very eventful for Manchester and Essex. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I mean, the obvious thing ringing in the new year with what? Like the weather. Like the,
Unbelievable, right? So yeah, you want to talk about the flooding that Manchester and Essex experienced?
well, I think we're uniquely suited for flooding. I mean, we'll start with Essex, which even before high tide, the causeway flooded. And that's that part that my heart over it was like, wait a minute, I just went to the ribbon cutting. They had the ribbon cutting of the causeway. Everything seems fine, but it was, I mean, and it was a double whammy. The first time before high tide, I want to say it was like by 9:30 in the morning on, what was it, Tuesday morning? I think it was already like the whole causeway was basically flooded, and they were shutting it down. I mean, it was just bad. So anyway, that's Essex.
Yeah.
But Essex made it through okay. I mean, I think it was that weird thing about how we had that crazy snowstorm, first of the season snow, right? Which
Hmm.
was like 6 inches overnight. And then bingo, then the temperature went down, and that kind of then we had that rainstorm with that crazy wind. I mean, it was just crazy weather,
Yeah.
crazy. Over in Manchester, you know what happened? We have two municipal parking lots, the two major ones, one behind Town Hall,
Yep.
which is where, the water treatment center is, the American Legion, the Town Hall, the
Police
Masonic,
station. Yeah.
the police station, right? Yeah, the water was up to the police station. And then that parking lot completely flooded all the way up to the Masonic building, basically, which is up on a hill. So
Mm.
that happened. And then Masconomo Park, which is downtown, that's another big lot. The whole place was closed. We ran a picture there's this kind of little house structure that's out at the end of a little dock, and it's the Manchester Boat Club. I think it's like the Manchester Boat Club. It's their launch, basically. And it always has a little tree on it. It's a cute little vignette. Well, we had a picture of that from the parking lot. It looked like the whole thing was waterfront, because the whole parking, and if you looked closely in the picture, you could still see the parking stripes underwater.
Oh,
It
really?
was just crazy. It's
It's
very
nuts.
dramatic.
Well,
And yeah,
I was just gonna say, every now and then, like over the years, you would see occasional cool aerial footage of the Causeway or Manchester Harbor, where you would get an idea of just how precarious the situation would be. And nowadays, with everyone with a drone or whatever, you're like, we're in trouble here. Like, but we're gonna get swallowed up soon.
yeah, you could see that it was like kind of the nature reclaiming what used to be Tappan Street in Manchester,
Mm.
and Harbor's Point and all that. That used to be fill. I mean, that used to be water, and it was filled. Sorry, that is fill.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the flooding wants to kind of go up there, and also the parking lot behind Town Hall. Similarly, I think that was kind of filled in around the time of the train tracks getting put in,
Mm.
which is actually a good a segue to something that I might bring up later with
Why
you.
don't we, you know what? Let's just segue to it now because it was too seamless, Erika. So yeah, so obviously one of the huge stories that has sprouted up recently is what's going to happen with the zoning regarding the areas around MBTA station. So now walking tours have begun to help inform residents.
Yeah, it's this density requirement that the state is making all of the towns in Massachusetts that are serviced by the MBTA or near it benefit from the MBTA, let's call it. They're saying in exchange for that benefit, you're going to have to weigh in on some density requirements. I think it's like 15 units per acre or something like that. And so all these towns, and all four towns in Cape Ann, were impacted by this: Essex, Rockport, Gloucester, and Manchester. So it's going to be a big deal. I mean, if I were to say a big theme for the year is going to be housing, and affordable housing, and housing, just housing in general, right? And then workforce, like do people have people working for them? But anyway, so it's a real kind of boogeyman kind of conversation, because every town needs to vote on it at town meeting before the end of the calendar year this year, right?
Yep.
So Manchester, I think, is going to be taking a first bite at the apple at their annual town meeting in April or May. And the reason for that is if it goes south for whatever reason, or it just something goes wrong, voting problems, or people don't have enough information, or, they have another shot at it before the end of the year and they're not up a creek. So one of the things that the MBTA, there's a task force doing, the MBTA zone task force did this year, last week, is they had a walk. They had what's called a density walk, which I think is not the best name, right?
Marketing, please. Yeah.
Density walk.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lot of people went. What the idea was, let's take a walking tour of all of the structures downtown that exist right now that actually meet the requirement, because there are many of them. So suddenly it kind of takes the air out of all the controversy. It takes the heat out of it. When you can see it and you can say, hey, that building's 4 stories. It's been around for the last 150 years. We love it. It's cute. It's beautiful. It's quintessential New England. It doesn't bother us. It's not Rantoul Street. And so it kind of demystifies it and makes it a little less scary and says, listen, this is what we're talking about. I think the next big step is going to be then saying, okay, how many of these and where would they be? And remember, by the way, this requirement is not to build anything.
Right.
I'm going to say that again. It's not to build anything. And people kind of conflate that. And I think that's kind of a problem because it makes everyone kind of get up on the anxiety, meter. And so, I mean, for instance, Manchester already has in certain districts, you can legally, by right, build a 3-family. But you don't see a bunch of 3 families in Manchester. Just because you can doesn't mean you will. So I just want to put that out there because that gets lost in all the discussions and the back and forth.
Absolutely.
But,
yep.
Yeah, I was at a meeting in the chamber last week, and I was talking about how successful this density walk was. And they were saying, wow, that's a really good idea. We should be doing that in other towns because it's really helpful to inform people, and people, I think they bought coffee for everybody at the Laughing Gull afterwards, which was really nice. So
There we go.
I think they're going to do it again. So good job. So
Yeah.
There you go.
I love the thought of that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, lastly, Erika, Bill Bell was faded by dignitaries recently.
Yes, and he wasn't faded, so I shouldn't say that. But Billy Bell, or Bill Bell, is a character in town. First of all, the Bells have been in Manchester. I think they're one of those families that go way back, like almost to the 1600s type thing. They've been around for a very long time, very old family. And Bill Bell is sort of a super familiar face and a very funny, awesome guy at the American Legion Hall. So we know him. He's like Mr. Vet. So with that, Mr. Veteran, because he's a veteran of Grenada and the Falkland Islands. Remember those?
Oh, wow. The very first news event I ever remember as a child was the Falkland Islands War.
Falkland Islands. So anyways, he's an Air Force veteran. His older brother, David, is a Navy veteran. And he has been volunteering at the Chelsea Soldiers Home, which has now been reopened because it's now this fancy $200 million platinum LEED certified. It's got 146 geothermal, drops. I mean, and it's fossil fuel negative. It's 0. Like it's a very advanced, fancy building for veterans. 157. And it used to be a problem. It used to be like a facility that was the opposite of innovative and state of the arts, but now they've reopened it. He's been volunteering there for 30 years and he's a super familiar face. You call anybody there and they'll be like, oh yeah, Billy Bell. When he first started volunteering there 30 years ago, and I'll get to how he, the fancy part, but 30 years ago, his first day, he was paired for a one-on-one visit with this veteran who 30 years ago was 103 years old. And his name was William Dobson, and he was from Essex. Oh. Isn't that a weird coincidence?
Yeah.
And Billy was telling me that William Dobson used to talk about how back in his day, they would move a house to Manchester in the wintertime by ox-drawn cart.
Whoa.
Isn't that wild?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so there are certain houses in Manchester where Billy's like, yeah, like that house on School Street that came in by that. Anyway, so at the opening or the reopening, it drew everybody. Like Senator Warren was there, U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, of course, Maura Healey was there. They had the U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs come up from D.C., Dennis McDonough. And then they also had the veteran guy, veteran services guy, John Santiago from Massachusetts, right? So they were all there. Billy was there, and he was hobnobbing, and he said it was the biggest thing he'd ever been invited to, right? So he comes back, and I'm talking to him, and he says, "You might, maybe we'll mention this in the paper. I've got a couple pictures," and he sends me these pictures. Honestly, they're this big in his phone, and they're this big on my computer. I can't use them. And I go, well, I'll call the home and see if there are other pictures. When the governor's there, they got fancy photographers. I can get some nice pictures. I said, and I'll pair it with your not so nice picture, but not so good quality, not nice. Anyway, so I do that, right? Here's the kicker. He said, well, nobody took my picture. I wasn't there. Nobody took my picture. That's like literally he's talking to me. What about it? This is all I've got. Do you know that I have a picture running on the front page of Billy Bell, close up, getting his a two-handed shake, a warm, lean-in, two-handed handshake by Maura Healey, the governor.
Now we should have T-shirts made, right?
So it's a gorgeous picture of Billy looking right into her eyes. He's got his beret on with all the, the medals and everything. And here he is getting his picture taken up close with this awesome picture. And here he is saying to me, nobody got my picture. Anyway, so he's a great guy. I mean, good on him for doing his thing. He's also, by the way, for the last 20 years, he has been the second in command, kind of the support command. It's an appointed position for the Massachusetts commander for the Massachusetts American Legion. And the one who is doing it right now happens to be from Gloucester. Sandra, golly, I gotta find her name. Sandra Davis. Sandra Davis. She is the commander for all of the state for the American Legion, which I did not know. Wow. And I love that for Cape Ann. So there you go.
Great stuff. Excellent stuff this week, Erika. Way to get off on the right foot. All right. We will catch up with you this time next week. In the meantime, stay dry, Erika.
You too. Oh, God, yes. You too.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.